Hey guys, thought I would share a little bit of my process with you on making my PEI girl mugs. So, of course, first step is throwing. So I'm just dampening my bat here. I prefer to throw on bats. And this is just a mid-smooth brown stoneware by Pottery Supply House. When it came, it was pretty stiff, so I put about a half a cup of water in the bag and submerged it in a big bucket of water to soften it up a bit. I might have went a little overboard. It's a bit soft, but if I had to pick between too soft and too hard, I would probably pick too soft for a smaller piece. Obviously, for a big bowl or whatever, that would be tricky. So, and this is not going to be a how-to throw video because there are lots of people out there with amazing throwing videos. I'll just let you see a little bit about what I do. So I'm just coning up and down at the moment. And then opening up. And I'll just have a peek at my bottom and make sure it should be okay. It's a little bit thin, so I'll just, as I'm opening, I'm going to lift my finger a little bit so that I can just adjust the bottom. And then just compressing the bottom. Bringing it in, collaring it in. And I usually just do a sort of a final centering thing where I push down with this part and I kind of bring in and I just hold the wall. Sorry, forget I have a camera here. So I push down on the rim with this piece and kind of compress it in and hold the wall with this hand just to make sure that that is centered, because sometimes things get a little off center in the opening or the collaring. Always trying to remember to compress my rim. Because this clay is really soft, I'm not quite sure how many pulls it'll take me. I'm going to be careful with this. Coloring in again. Okay, so here we go. Really soft clay is a different challenge than really hard clay in that it wants to wobble and get out of shape on you pretty quickly. And also you do not have the luxury of many pulls. Because as you know, every time you make a pull with a mug or a piece, anything, a cylinder, you're introducing water into the clay. And that water makes the clay softer. So I'm really this is going to be my last pull, and I'm going to shape a little bit as I'm pulling. So I'm still pulling up a little bit of clay here. And then making a slight indent here. Take my trusty sponge stick and get the water out of the bottom. Take the excess clay off the bottom. Finally, just using my metal rib to continue the shaping. I kind of have an idea of the shape I want here, and this needs some refining. So I'm just pushing out against the rib, slowly, slowly, gently. And that's pretty close to the shape I want right there. And then just on my rim, a little bit of a cleanup. Trying to get all the slurry off. Clean up my rim. It's funny how water is your friend and your enemy when you're throwing. One last little bit of water in the bottom of that. And that should do it. So here you go. That is my mug. Okay guys, just a glimpse of how on a nice sunny summer day I push my luck, and I will let my mugs dry outside in the sun. So I'll let them firm up quite a bit, then I'll take them off the bats, flip them over, and if I'm in a real hurry to get something done, I will then put them back outside upside down till they're ready to be trimmed. Now, I would never do this with porcelain. It would crack all over the place, but stoneware is much, much more forgiving. Okay, so I'm ready to do the handles for the mugs. And I have a fairly thick slab of clay laid there, probably close to ½ inch, a little less than ½ inch. I have a bowl of water, a sponge. I have a metal rib. And I'm going to start by smoothing out my clay, because I've put it through the slab roller, so it's got canvas marks in it. So just don't have to be super, super thorough, because you'll see what I'm going to do to make my handles. So I don't pull handles. I don't love pulling handles. I guess it's a skill I could work on, but this works for me. I've done it for a long time, so it's quite quick. And I don't have a big extruder, so that would be the other option. So this works. And I'm just going to take my clay, cut it into a rectangle, roughly the width of what I want my handles to be. Of course, being careful to try to keep my knife straight up and down, so I'm not cutting on an angle. And this part I just eyeball. I think the strips I cut can vary according to what kind of mugs I'm making, but in this case, I'm probably going to do about a 3/4 inch. The mugs are quite girthy that I'm making today, so I like a hefty mug. That's just a personal preference. If you don't like a hefty mug, you can make thinner handles, obviously. It's just whatever you like. I think we're often guided by what we enjoy in the pieces we use, and I like a handle that's really easy to hang on to. So I cut all my strips first, and I've thrown 9 mug forms this morning, and they're drying in the sun as we speak. The humidity is finally broken here, so it was taking a long time to dry things, but today things are drying really quick out there. So I'll have to be careful I don't leave it out too long. So we're just going to keep going. Till I get to 9. And if you have an interesting way to do handles, let me know in the comments. There's so many different ways to do things, and we all find what works for us. So that's my 9. When I first started, I used to make an extra just to be on the safe side, but I'm kind of past that now. So I just take a damp sponge and we'll start with the first bottom row, and I'm pressing in along the layer with the sponge. Just trying to soften that edge. So this is going to be the back of the handle. Then I just take my fingers and press again. So I'm kind of squeezing and pressing so that I don't have real sharp edges on my handles, because that is no fun to pick up a mug and feel the edge cutting into your hand. So it's all about function, how things feel. And then next step, I just take a simple wooden dowel. That's it. And press in the middle to make that indent. I mean, you don't have to use a dowel. You could use a stamp. You can not put a press in the middle, but it does give a nice spot for your thumb to rest. And then once again, going along the edges and also in the middle a little bit, because I'll just try to refine the shape a tiny bit with my fingers. So just bringing my finger down and make sure my indent is nice and defined, and if my fingers get a little too dry, I just stick them back in the bowl of water. Then I pull it off. Sometimes I get a little bit of an indent from my mat, so I just do that. And I take a wear board, and I'll see if I can get this in better view for you guys. There we go. And I just shape it into a mug handle and let it set up a little bit. Remembering that I'm working with soft clay, right? So the mugs have dried some, so these definitely have to set up if I don't want to run into cracking issues. And the other thing I do is once I get the mugs on, even though I've dried the mugs in the sun, the body of the mugs in the sun, once I get the handle on and the appliques on, then they're going to go under plastic at least overnight, so that everything has a chance to homogenize and even out, so that you don't get cracking. So there's my handles. Okay guys, so I'm ready to trim one of the mugs, and I use a Giffen grip. I know some people don't like them, but I love Giffen grips. I think they make life so much easier. Tight. Fun fact, I actually am left-handed. So when I first took pottery lessons, I didn't let the instructor know that I was left-handed. So I learned to throw right-handed, but I trim left-handed. So I have to reverse my wheel when I trim. Get this up a little bit, maybe. There we go. And I'm just going to should have got that ready before I started. I don't see it. I'll have to find it after. I was just looking for the little spinning disc that makes, oh, there it is. Okay, great. Just this little disc, so you don't have to use your fingers on the top of the mug. Just defining the curve. Go. I think that looks pretty good. And very messy right here. And I switched today from white clay to dark clay. So from white stoneware to like a mid-brown stoneware. And I used to think I had to clean my studio from one end to the other. And I talked to a really experienced potter one day. And she said, "What are you doing that for?" I said, "Well, what?" And she said, "Well, unless you are like doing a lot of really fine painting work or whatever," she said, "really, you don't need to clean that much." And it's true. And I've taken her advice, and it really makes a difference. So, you know, I clean up some, and I have a clean bucket of water, and I do have a different wedging board for dark clay and white clay, but that's about it, really. And I kind of just clean as I go. And it used to take me like, gosh, maybe a day or a half day to flip a studio, and now it's maybe an hour. So that was a great tip I got from her. And then I just put this little flat piece in. Typically I'll use this as my wax line because I wax my bottoms. So it just gives me a guide when I'm waxing where to put, and it's just maybe 1/4 of an inch up. And I'll just use my fingers to smooth the bottom. If it's a really, I might trim it if there was problems with the bottom, but this bottom's good. So there we go. And then the last thing I'll do, and sometimes I won't do that now, but I'm going to try it. I have a stamp, and if I feel like the bottom is set up enough, I'll stamp it at this stage. And if I feel like it's still a little too soft, which happens when you're rushing things sometimes, then I'll wait. But I just have this little metal stamp that says Finkel Pottery. I'll just put it right in the middle. Might be a tiny bit soft, but it's okay. I think it'll be all right. So there's that. There's the bottom. There's the mug. So that's how I trim a mug. Okay, so I am ready to put the applique on the mug now. I have my trimmed mug and put my handle on. So I use a slab roller, and to do the appliques, I put it through the thinnest setting on the slab roller. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, I just like the look aesthetically. I like the thinner piece, but also sometimes when I use thicker appliques or thicker medallions or whatever you want to call it on a mug, it might pull the mug a little bit out of round. So I'm finding the thinner works better. The other thing though, you have to watch, because it's thin, is glaze will run around it somewhat, but there's not as much of a barrier for the glaze. So just keep that in mind too. So right now I'm just clearing the pattern out of the clay. And that's just from the slab roller and the canvas that I used to roll through it. And it's set up a little bit. I rolled it a few minutes ago, and it's pretty thin, so it doesn't take too long to dry out. But I am going to give it a little bit of cornstarch, which just helps from things sticking to it, because I am going to letter it. A reminder, I'm doing one of my PEI Girl mugs. And then I'm just taking this little square cookie cutter, and I'm going to cut a square and pop it out. And I'll do the others after. So I've got one square here. Sometimes I'll just give it a little smooth because it can get a little raggedy. Let me show you, get a little raggedy on the edges. So I have to make sure I don't get water on the front though. So then I just take my letter stamps, and these are MKM stamps, and I have, they're not cheap, but holy cow, I use these so much. I certainly got my money's worth 10 times over on them. So I recommend them if you're looking for a nice letter stamp. So I'm just going to do the first row, which is PEI, and the second row is girl. Maybe I need to come a little closer. Okay. So just a little wiggle and press in. And I want to have it deep enough that some glaze can sit in it, because what I'll typically do is glaze the whole mug and then wipe back the applique. And you want enough glaze to sit in there that it won't burn out, and it'll make the words pop. And girl. When I get really tired, I start spelling stuff wrong, but I'm pretty good today. And they're not long words, so I don't have much excuse. And there you go. PEI girl. And PEI is just the name of our province, Prince Edward Island. And sometimes I'll put the handle on first, and sometimes I'll put the applique on first. I think maybe I'll put my handle on first. So I'm just going to let that sit there for a minute. Just take a scoring tool. And I usually just look at the mug to see if there's a spot that's better to put the handle on. This looks fine. Score and slip. I eyeball a lot of stuff, so my handles are always slightly different sizes and stuff, but Works for me. It also varies the mugs a lot, so people can pick the one that feels the best for them. So it's kind of a nice personalized thing too. Oh, so I'm gonna move this. So I'm just taking my X-Acto knife and I'll move my letters. And I'm just cutting on an angle where I want the mug to attach, and also at the bottom. But what I'll typically do, also cutting on an angle, is I'll just take the mug that I've scored and make sure I like the size of the handle. Sometimes I'll have to take a little more off, but this is good. So now I just flatten this bot, so you can see I've angled it. But now I'm just gonna flatten it just a little bit more, because you wanna get as much room for it to attach to the mug as possible so you don't have cracking, especially when I'm sort of not rushing the process, but forcing the process, I guess would be fair, because I'm basically making mugs in one day here, beginning to end. So I just scored my handle as well, and then I'm going to score and, slip my, and I just use water. I could use slip, but water seems to work okay. I score really well, and then I'm just going to take it, and I don't know if I can do this so you can see. I don't want to pull the mug. I'm just going to attach the top first. Same as if you were pulling a handle, you'd still, and just start working it in to the mug. Sometimes you need some water. Oops. And then I'm going to attach the bottom because I almost ripped my handle there. I'm not used to trying to do this and try to show somebody what I'm doing, but anyway, it's all good. All good. So, keep on going here. So I'm just really making sure my joins are attached and that they're smooth, so that when they're glazed, they look like they're part of the mug. And that it's straight. So that looks pretty good. Mucky, but good. Then I just take a little ball of clay, roll it, and score at the bottom of my mug. Little flip, stick it on, just a spiral, press it in. That kind of finishes the handle, and also strengthens the join, so that's good. Now I am going to put on my applique, and I want to have it in the front, pretty close to the front of my mug. So I kind of lay across where the handle is, and I eyeball where I think the applique should go. I just use a finger. It's not like an exact science. It seems to work okay for me. So I'm just scoring and slipping where I'm going to put that applique. So there's that. And then this too. And some water. And some water. And hint here, I used to not do this and learn through time and error that when you're putting a medallion or an applique on, make sure you press it in the middle first. And then I just press it lightly first to make sure that I'm happy with where it's sitting, and I am. And then you kind of press from the middle out, because you can get air bubbles in the middle of your applique, and then you'll get a bump. Just a little water with my finger to smooth those edges. And there you go. That is a PEI Girl mug. I will dry it upside down and cover it with plastic, typically only for a day or two, and then I'll let it out and let it dry naturally, and then it'll be ready to fire.